Hey everyone, thank you for joining me for another YouTube video discussion. It is me, that retro geek, here to talk to you about something interesting. Well, to me, I'm a big Zelda fan, and so we're going to talk about this announcement that Zelda has apparently been or is now currently, I guess, working with Sony to make the Legend of Zelda movie. Now, unlike everybody else, I don't care about casting. For the most part, as long as we're not talking something egregious like putting The Rock in there as Ganondorf, and even then, maybe The Rock as Ganondorf might work. I'd have to see. I would have to see who they announce, but it's not so much about who is being Zelda or who's being Link. It's more so the little intricacies that I'm interested in. Like, are they going to have it to where Link talks? How is he going to sound? Are they going to make it to where they somehow figure out a system for him not to talk, but also talk? Kind of like what they do in Breath of the Wild and Skyward Sword, where he says stuff and you see him moving, but only the characters hear him. Who knows? But I did want to have three main points that I wanted to talk about when it comes to this Zelda discussion video. So hopefully you'll join me for this discussion, and make sure that you leave your thoughts in the comments down below about any of the stuff that we talk about, or anything that you want to talk about when it comes to the Zelda movie announcement. So the very first thing that I want to talk about, and we'll just go ahead and get it out there, is where does this fit in the timeline? And more importantly, I guess the second part of this question is, should it be a part of the timeline? Now, we're going to sort of throw this out there in two separate discussions, so bear with me for a moment. First of all, should it be a part of the timeline? Well, I think so. Unless they do something like the Mario movie, where it's sort of its own thing and they bring in all these Easter eggs, which would make it, I guess, more aligned with the modern Zelda games, the Breath of the Wilds and the Tears of the Kingdom, that sort of have all these Easter eggs pointing towards, oh look, that's Tingle. Oh look, that's Beetle. Oh look, that's a nod towards Majora's Mask. They might do something like that, or they'll probably just do like what they did with the Mario movie or even with the Sonic movies, and just have it to where it takes place in its own world that makes these little nods towards one another. But so that's the first discussion, I guess, is should it be a part of the timeline? I mean, I don't care either way. If they make it its own thing, I'm still going to love it. I'm still going to like it. I'm going to see what they did. And like, oh yes, that's making a nod towards Fi. That's making a nod towards Ganondorf or whatever. But I guess the more important part is going back to the original part of the question, and that is, where should it fit on the timeline? Because that is a huge basis about what they do. Because you see, this is a completely different, and this is the reason why I'm surprised that Zelda's second. I'm not surprised that Zelda's second, because it is basically the second largest franchise, but I really thought they were going to save Legend of Zelda towards the end, because when you have games like Mario that don't really have a story, they don't really have a timeline, they just sort of their own thing. Bowser takes a princess and you go and you save her, or Bowser takes these pixie queens and you go and save them, or Bowser does something else and then you have to go stop him. It's very formulaic. And why you can say the same thing about Zelda, because hey, the Zelda gets kidnapped, or hey, she gets put into whatever. There are different little differences there, like Spirit Tracks, for an example, where she's technically a spirit and can possess phantoms, and the main villain of that was Malladus, or I think it was Malladus, not Malice, but and then you got like Bellum, and you've got some stuff going on with, Vati and other enemies that show up every now and then. And even you can even sort of introduce the idea of Trinrova as being this witch from the Gerudo tribe that's looking to bring back a great evil known as Ganondorf. There's all kinds of stuff that you could do. But I think that the best place to do it is something that has not been done before in a Zelda, and that is the origin. Because while it's sort of like, okay, yeah, Skyward Sword is the furthest in the timeline and it makes reference to the goddess Hylia and this great evil, it did talk about a champion that the goddess chose to help her fight Demise. So, and while that would be great, for Zelda fans like myself, they're like, oh man, they're doing Demise! And, they're talking about the goddesses and Jin and Nehru and the Triforces and stuff like that. I don't think they're going to do that. Because as cool as that would be for a Zelda nerd like myself to basically, see the origins of Hyrule. And not just like the Skyward Sword origins of Hyrule, where the land's already there, and then Zelda comes down and they discover it and they take on Demise again. But that story that was alluded to in the beginning of Skyward Sword, with the goddess Hylia and her chosen champion and having to seal Demise. So while I think that would be a cool story for Zelda nerds like myself, would it go for the general audience that only knows about Ganon and maybe knows about Ganondorf? No, probably not. So what I think they're going to do to answer those two questions is they're going to do, and I don't want to talk about it because it's going to make it seem like, oh, this is going to be official, but I think they're going to take a route like the animated series did. And they're going to take a little bit of liberties. They're probably going to have Zelda and Link already know each other. They're probably going to make the Triforces be a physical thing, like Ganon already has the Triforce of power, and maybe they're going to then talk about his back history, kind of like what they did a little bit with Tears of the Kingdom. They kept showing they kept showing scenes in history that involved Ganondorf and how he got to the state that he did now. But I think they're going to be a little bit more like Ganon is already there. He's already a threat, kind of like how he is in Wind Waker. He's already there. He's got his power. He's got his army. And they're going to do little backlog stories where they're going to be like, and once upon a time, a long time ago, there was a Gerudo prince known as Ganondorf. And they're just going to go through the story about how he came into power. And then it talked about one time about a princess who would step forward for a hero and stop him. This is the legend of Zelda. Or just something like that. And then they just throw those little nods in there, like what we talked about before, where they didn't sort of mention, hey, we talked about Ganondorf, but we also sort of make hints to Majora's Mask. Or we make hints to the Dark Realm. Or we make references to maybe like the Twilight Realm in Midna or whatever. I don't know what they're going to do. I think it's going to be interesting, because I sort of imagine this sort of live action take on the animated series where it's going to be kind of campy. Because I think you have to be kind of campy in order to do Legend of Zelda. Because there's just no way, especially with how expressive Link's eyes were in Wind Waker and how he had sort of those sarcastic looks. I don't see how a lot of the stuff that goes on in The Legend of Zelda is something that Link takes seriously. And I'm not saying he has to be a Nathan Drake and just be quippy about everything. But I think that maybe he'll speak up every now and then and he'll be like, are we really doing this? Almost being like the reluctant hero kind of thing. Now, what do you guys think? Do you think this is something that should be like official canon? Maybe it's like an origin story with Goddess Hylia and the goddesses talking about the very first hero of Hyrule? Or do you think that would be too alienating to the fans of Legend of Zelda that maybe haven't played the new games, or maybe remember it only on the NES or the Super Nintendo, and like, yeah, but I thought the bad guy was Ganon or something, because just like they could have done the same thing with Bowser, or I should say in the Mario movie, they could have made it be somebody other than Bowser. I think bringing in other villains like, the Yiga clan, or just anybody else, I think needs to come in other movies. Kind of like what they did of Sonic, how they sort of like they teased Tails at the end, but it was all about Sonic, and then they teased Shadow at the end of Sonic 2, and just little teases to the next one. I think that you need to just start off simple at first. Just make sure you're introducing Link and Zelda, and maybe the whole Malice demise angle that talks about his revenge or whatever, or it can just be again briefly talked about in sort of a recap at the beginning of the movie, and now we're here in modern times, and then the future movies can jump back and forth in time and all that stuff. It's the Legend of Zelda. They can do whatever they want. They do time paradoxes and time jumping all the time, and realm jumping, and they can pretty much do whatever. But what do you guys think about that? And then the last question that I wanted to do, and it's sort of something that I already answered, but I want to hear your thoughts on it, is if this takes off, which more likely it will. I mean, it's The Legend of Zelda. Come on. Where do they take it from here? And the answer is simple. Other villains. This is something that I've talked about in the past, is just bringing other villains. Maybe Ganondorf dies. Like they officially kill him. But at the end, maybe we can introduce the Twin Rover, and it's like this very obsessive clan that are obsessed with bringing back. And that can sort of be like, oh, this is the Yiga clan, and Twin Rover has set up the Yiga clan, and they're really obsessed with bringing back Ganondorf and Ganon. Like they're just really obsessed with it. And that's sort of the segue into the next movie. Or it can be Ganondorf, like a person, and then in the second movie gets brought back as like the demon Ganon, or maybe we set up Demise, because then it's just like but there was one who's more stronger than Ganon, and we must bring him back, and that's Demise. But what do you guys think? Because I had one more question about what is the next movie they should do, and really I think that we'll do that topic later on, because I've already kind of talked about that in a previous video about other series that I want to see Nintendo do. And that's the reason why I said, sort of in the beginning of this video, that I'm surprised that they're doing Zelda now, because that is the most convoluted one, probably story-wise, to really nail. And also the most because like with Mario, again, it's all the same game. With Star Fox, it's a lot of the same game. So you can just introduce the idea of like Fox McCloud and his father and Star Fox and Angelos and all that stuff like that. And with Metroid, it's a pretty linear timeline. It makes sense, especially when you got the little interquels between 1 and 2. So that one seemed like it'd be easier enough. And Samus is already spoken in other games, so the idea of her talking doesn't seem like it's too far left field. But when you have a character that's never spoken, outside of maybe Hylian, if we assume that the grunts and stuff that he makes are in Hylian, then yeah, how do you do that? But what do you guys think? I'm going to go ahead and just end this video, round it out about maybe 15 minutes or so, and just get you guys' opinions about what we've talked about. Where do you want this to fall in the timeline? Should it fall in the timeline? And what villains or storyline arcs do you want to see them do next? Because I just think it's going to be interesting to see where this goes. I really thought this would have worked better as like a TV show, almost like a Game of Thrones kind of thing, or maybe just some kind of like a really short like Netflix series, for example, that's 8 to 10 episodes and just concludes it all in one game and then moves on to another one for the next season. Like that just seemed like that would have made the most sense. But if they're going to do a movie, then does this mean that like Sony Pictures Core is going to have The Legend of Zelda on it in a year or two? Who knows? But I hope that that's something that you guys have liked me talking about. Make sure you leave a thumbs up or a comment, or just subscribe if you want, because I'm going to try to bring you more weekly access. And yeah, I just wanted to get all my thoughts about it, so I apologize in advance about the rant, but there was just a lot of stuff going through my mind, and I've been spending a couple of days thinking about it, so I figured now would be a good time to just go ahead, get it out there, and just share my thoughts. But hope you guys have yourself a fantastic rest of your day, and if I don't make this is the end of the week, so what am I talking about? It's going to be next week when I see you, so I'll see you guys next week in the next video. Have a good one.